Welcome to Immigration Insider with your host, Attorney John Nicelli. This podcast is an educational forum on how to deal with complex aspects of immigration and pitfalls to avoid. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, johnnicelli.com. Now here's the host of Immigration Insider, Attorney John Nicelli.
Hi, everyone. I'm John Nicelli. I'm an immigration attorney in New York City for going on almost 44 years. And today I would like to bring you up to date on what's going on with people that are filing for asylum. So there's many distressing things with changes in rules and procedures. So what's recently happened that we've, during the Biden administration, I should say, millions of people came into the United States and stopped at the border, or turned themselves in at the border and then filed for asylum. But many people filed for asylum because they wanted permission to work and didn't necessarily even know what a bona fide asylum claim represented. So as a result, the courts have been inundated with these asylum claims, and they're in the millions. And many of the courts are delayed for many years. So when you want to have a case that's to be heard before a judge and you want it to be quickly, it's not going to happen quickly, no matter how good or bad your claim is. So the issue is that what do you do with so many asylum claims? So the Trump administration figured out a solution. And the solution is that they've made these agreements called asylum cooperative agreements with approximately 15 countries. And what these agreements are agreements with these 15 countries that have agreed with the United States government to accept any person who's filed for asylum in the United States. So if you file for asylum and you're before an immigration judge, the government who's the prosecutors, make a motion to pre-submit the application, meaning that you can't file the application before the court if the court agrees, and basically tells the judge, they don't have to go to whatever country they're from because we have 15 other countries that we can send them to that will readily accept them based on these asylum cooperative agreements. What's that done basically is that it has canceled pretty much 99% of the asylum applications. And most judges go along with these pre-submission motions because honestly, they're fearful of being fired. And in some cases, the people really don't have very strong claims for asylum and don't meet the criteria. The problem is that, let's say you're from a country, say Poland in Europe, okay? Or you're from somewhere in South America. So if you're from a country where there's really not really serious problems concerning asylum applicants or living conditions in those countries, and your fear is really not a strong fear of returning to whatever country it is. So you go to court and you say, Judge, I'm from this country. And the government says, Judge, we're going to pre-submit it. They don't have a claim from this particular country. And we can send them to other countries such as Belize, Uganda, Rwanda, Costa Rica, and South Sudan, for example, Ecuador, Guatemala, Honduras. These are some of the countries. Now, the government claims that these countries are safe for any applicant to go to. So let's say you're from Ecuador, for example. Ecuador happens to be one of the countries that agree with the United States that they'll take back any asylee. But you tell the judge and the government prosecutor, no, I don't want to go to Ecuador. I'm fearful for my life in Ecuador. They'll say, no problem, we can send you to Uganda. We can send you to Rwanda. Or we can send you to Eswatini. Now, many people don't even know what Eswatini is or never heard of the place. Well, that used to be Swaziland. And it's basically a landlocked country in the southern part of Africa. So which borders, I believe it's Mozambique. So the problem is that, would you rather live, say, in Ecuador and take your chances? Or would you want to go to Uganda or Rwanda or South Sudan, which probably has the highest starvation rate in the world? I mean, I don't think anybody would really want to go there. And one of the problems that I understand is going on right now that after we sent thousands and thousands of dollars in transporting these people to these foreign countries, many of them, they don't harm the people, but what they do is send them back to the country they came from. So if you're from Ecuador, for example, and you're afraid to go to Ecuador or Poland or anywhere in Central or South America, anywhere in the world, basically, they'll just send you to one of those countries. And then that country will send you back to the country you really don't want to go to. So it's really a turnaround process, and it's really outrageous what's going on. So, but what happens now is there was a lawsuit brought in Massachusetts, and approximately a week ago, there was a district court judge that found these agreements to be unconstitutional. So that's being challenged in the courts. But the government's position is that it was a district court judge's decision, and it only applies in the district of that court in Massachusetts. So if you're from Texas or Arizona or California or Montana or somewhere else, they can argue it doesn't apply, which is another problem. So let's say now you're in this position and you haven't been to court. So you say, well, my only claim is asylum because that's what's kept me here with my permission to work. Well, one of the things that you can do, and I hope some employers are listening to this, is that if you're an asylee and you applied for asylum within 6 months of entering the United States, it has to be within 6 months, not 1 day more than 6 months. That means that you never acquired unlawful presence. So if you never acquired unlawful presence, then you can be sponsored through a job, any job basically, through an employer. So what I suggest to everyone, and I tell my clients, that, listen, you have no claim for asylum, and the government's going to send you somewhere else, which you really don't want to go to, and eventually end up in your country anyway. So probably the best thing to do is, before you even go to court, is try to find an employer who'll sponsor you. So if you get sponsored through a job based on your skills, whether that be carpentry, for example, plumbing, masonry, you could be a housekeeper, a secretary, there's a zillion types of jobs you can be sponsored for. It could even be an engineer, all right, or anything else. So what happens is you get sponsored before you go to court. Then when you go to court, you tell the judge, no, judge, I don't want asylum, because you don't want the judge to find it frivolous, which would bar you for life from getting any benefit to become a permanent resident. And you just tell the judge, I want to leave. So you may have to leave for a period of time, but it's best to leave without an order of deportation. You stay in your country maybe 2 years, maybe a year, depends on when you leave. And then you come back without having been deported. And when you come back, you'll have an interview at the embassy before coming, or a consulate, and you'll be a permanent resident. You'll return to the United States legally, and you'll have a job waiting for you as long as that employer is cooperative. And most employers are cooperative. So that's a definite possibility of what I would recommend for many, many asylees to do. Another thing that I suggest people do, that if you filed for asylum and you're married to a resident or a citizen, you may be eligible for a waiver for unlawful presence. So if you filed for asylum more than 6 months after you arrived, then you're subject to the unlawful presence bar, and that presents another problem. But if you're married to a resident or a citizen, or you have a child that's 21 years old that can file for you, then what you can do is have someone file for you. And then if you have a parent or a spouse that's a resident or a citizen, then you can file for a waiver and be forgiven for unlawful presence. Those waivers now take about 2 to 3 years. It's called an I-601 waiver. We do many, many of them. And again, what you do is you go to court and you tell the judge, I either postpone my case until the waiver is approved and have a visa appointment abroad so I can leave voluntarily. Or if they're not cooperative, then ask the judge for voluntary departure. So you leave without an order of deportation, and then you get processed and are forgiven for that unlawful presence. That's what I would highly recommend. Even if you end up going voluntarily to your country and you then have to first file a waiver, if you're not able to file it beforehand, you could file it after your visa appointment. Again, it takes 2 to 3 years to be approved, but you will be able to come back. But to get a waiver for unlawful presence, you have to have a spouse or a parent who's a resident or citizen. So you can have a child who's 21, but having that child alone as being 21 years old is not enough to get the waiver. To get the waiver and be forgiven for unlawful presence, you must have a spouse or a parent who's a resident or citizen. So what I would suggest is to follow my advice and don't wait to court to try to figure out what you're doing, and try to get help long before you're even scheduled in court. So if you're an asylum applicant, you're in the country illegally or anything, speak to somebody like myself who can give you the right advice so you can avoid being deported. All right? Thank you very much. Again, my name is John Nicelli. My number is 212-227-8020. Or you can get us, check my website and send us an email at johnnicelli.com is the website, and john@johnnicelli.com is the email. All right. Thank you very much and have a good day.
You've been tuning into Immigration Insider with your host, Attorney John Nicelli. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, johnnicelli.com. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others.